Welcome to our weekly Ask the Fund Manager series. The premise is simple. We put a fund manager on the spot and we ask them questions about current events and how these events impact on investment markets. We aim to keep it interesting and understandable and do this all in under 5 minutes. We hope you enjoy.
Who is winning in the artificial intelligence race beyond the usual suspects in tech? Surprisingly, it's electrical power. The power demands of artificial intelligence this year alone are expected to equal the electricity consumption of Sweden. Yes, the entire country. And that's just the beginning. I'm Nicole Lowe, Investment Director, and joining me today is Fund Manager Dean Cook. Today, we're going to look at why electrical power has become the new frontier in AI infrastructure, how the tech giants are responding, and who's footing the bill. So, Dean, you have become like our data center correspondent with your family's history in data centers. We've talked a lot about big tech's investment in data centers to support the computing power for AI, but the conversation is shifting from computing to now the energy needed to sustain it all. So why is electricity now emerging as such a critical issue?
Thanks, Nicole, and I'll see what light I can shine on the issue. So I guess essentially the rise of AI model training, but really the application and usage of it has led to a massive build out of data centers. Many will require gigawatts of power, and we're talking about sort of the equivalent of small cities in many cases in terms of that demand. The IEA, so the International Energy Agency, has actually warned that global electricity demand from data centers could quadruple by 2030, and that's largely due to AI workloads. And if you think about it, ChatGPT is now estimated to be the 5th most visited website in the world, just after Instagram and ahead of X or Twitter. And a single ChatGPT style query can use 10 times more electricity than your standard Google search. Multiply that by billions of queries a day, and that's a whole new category of energy demand. From a practical perspective, data centers need water and electricity for cooling and power. So locations like Dublin and Virginia, which is the home of the largest data center hub in the world, they've actually paused new data center construction because of electrical power grid strain.
So AI's electrical demand is growing faster than grid capacity, but now we're reading and seeing big tech taking matters into their own hands and actually signing deals with energy companies. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I guess first, to me, it's a good sign because it shows that this demand is driving real investment, real economic activity on the ground. But big tech knows that it needs to secure long-term power. So Meta recently signed a 20-year deal with a US nuclear power provider to try and give it stable, carbon-free electricity for its AI data centers. And you've got the likes of Google and Microsoft. They're looking to make direct investments in renewables by funding solar and wind farms directly, and even experimenting with off-grid data centers powered by something called a small modular reactor. That's a new generation of compact nuclear reactors. They're even looking at advanced geothermal, where you tap into the heat underground to power their data centers. In the meantime, tech firms are also negotiating with utilities to sort out the upgrading of local grids to support this additional demand. And in some regions, the data center demand is now what drives grid investment, more so than households or industry.
Now, that Meta nuclear deal was the first of its kind by a major tech firm, which really signals that shift toward owning power reliability, as you mentioned. Now, with all this energy demand, who is actually paying for it, and how does this affect investors?
Yeah, so I guess although the tech companies themselves are investing in nuclear, geothermal, and solar to power their operations, as I mentioned, many of them are still going to rely on public grids, especially during peak demand periods. And consumers could end up footing the bill in many cases, even if they're not the ones responsible for that additional demand. Critics would argue that this is an unfair cost transfer for households, effectively subsidizing these energy needs. But sometimes it can be some outdated rules that are the reason for this. So in the US in 2024, there were consumers in 7 US states. They paid the equivalent of $4.3 billion for grid upgrades, largely linked to data center demand and connections. That doesn't seem particularly fair, but they're allowed to spread that cost across all ratepayers in those markets. But we are seeing technology firms increase investments in the public grids to help ease the pressure on them. And then that should effectively limit, one hopes, the spillover costs for households. From an investor's perspective, energy access and energy exposure is now part of that sort of technological risk assessment. And analysts will be tracking megawatts almost as much as market share.
Well, I suppose then the question isn't just who has the best model, it's now who has the power to run it. So energy is fast becoming that competitive edge. Thank you so much, Dean. Thank you all for watching, and join us again next week for another topic that's caught our eye.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you listen in again next week. Also, we love to get feedback and ideas for future episodes. You can use the link provided below to share your thoughts. Before you go, just some important information to be aware of. Unless otherwise stated, any opinions expressed are those of Aviva Investors. You should not be viewing this as an indication of any guarantee of return from an investment managed by Aviva Investors, nor as personal advice of any nature. Information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but have not been independently verified by Aviva Investors and is not guaranteed to be accurate. Past performance is not a guide to the future. This material is not a recommendation to sell or purchase any investment. The value of any investment and any income from it may go up as well as down, and the investor may not get back the original amount invested. Nothing in this material, including any reference to specific securities, asset classes, and financial markets, is intended to or should be considered as advice or recommendations of any nature.